All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session where we are going to be talking about measuring success, PM metrics, and product analytics. So this topic is a core part of product management because product management is about creating value. But how do we know if we are actually succeeding, right? How do we know if the features that we have launched or the tasks that we have completed are enough? We need to find a way to measure whether the users are engaging, whether they are finding value, and whether the product is, driving real business outcomes. That's where the product metrics and analytics comes in. So today, will be all about understanding how to measure product success. Now, not just in terms of features that we have launched, but in terms of the real impact our product has on users and, of course, on the business as well. You learn how to identify the right metrics that actually shows product health rather than getting lost in a lot of vanity numbers. We'll also look at how analytics can give you visibility into user behavior and how those insights can guide us in making better decisions. And of course, we'll also talk about how to take all of that data and put into a structured reporting plan, because measuring success isn't just about tracking numbers. It's also about turning them into stories. Please confirm you can hear me. Okay, a lot of people can hear me, so majority carries the vote. If you cannot hear me, kindly check your internet connection. Okay, so we are going to talk about tracking numbers and how we can turn those numbers into stories that our teams and stakeholders can act on. So by the end of this session, you'll see how metrics, how tools, and putting all of these metrics fit in together in one clear system, for making product management decisions, and also to help you make strategic decisions as well. Okay, let's get right into it. So this slide is titled "Why Measuring Success Matters." And honestly, if there's one thing I want you to always remember as future product managers, it's that our job is not just to ship features. Our job is to drive outcomes. Now, this might sound very simple, but it's actually one of the hardest mindset change for new PMs, and even for some experienced PMs as well. This is because in most organizations, right, the easiest thing to measure is outputs. Let me explain. Outputs are the things that we build, the features that we launch, the tickets, right, that we close on Linear or on Trello, or the new designs that gets merged into products, and so on. Now, these are visible, they are countable, and they are often celebrated. Stakeholders get to love outputs because they look and sound like progress. When your PM says, "Oh, we launched the new login flow, we added the dark mode feature, or we launched a new dashboard," those are outputs. Your login flow are outputs, your dark features, they are outputs, and your dashboard are also outputs. But here's the problem. The output doesn't guarantee success. You can ship, remember when I say ship a feature, I mean launch a feature. You can ship a feature after another feature, always shipping features, and still you're not moving the needle for your users. or for your business. If nobody uses the feature or if it doesn't change any behavior, then what did you really achieve, right? You spent time, spent resources, and you got a shiny new button in production, but no meaningful results. That's where outcomes, comes in. Outcomes are the changes in your user behavior, changes that prove that you have delivered value. For instance, if we launch a new onboarding flow, the output is the flow itself, while the outcome is whether new users can complete onboarding faster. Remember, we launched a new onboarding flow, right? So the outcome should be whether users can complete onboarding faster, or whether more of them reach the activation milestone. That's more of a measurable change in behavior. And then beyond outcomes, we get to impact. Impact is the business result that comes from that behavior. If more users activate successfully, maybe more of them retain longer. If they retain longer, maybe more of them convert into paid subscription. Now that is impact. That's the impact that that has given to you, and it's going to give you revenue. It's going to give you growth, retention, and possibly expansion. You can call that impact. So we've got three levels here. We've got the output, which is what we shipped or launched. We've got the outcome, which is what the users did differently because of your output. And the impact, which is meant for the business. Now think of it as a chain of reaction where you have feature, you have behavior, and then you have the business. Now, a quick example would be, let's say that we decided to build a new feature for our fitness app. Let's say the feature could be, let's say we want to add a workout streak tracker, right? The output of this is very simple. We built the tracker, it's live, and it works. Everyone is happy, right? But now the real question is, what's the outcome? We have given in the output, right? What is the outcome? Did users actually, work out more often because of the streak tracker that we shipped? Or did we have retention improve because, well, people didn't want to break their streak, so they get to come to the application and do more workouts? I hope we understand what I mean by streak, right? Now, okay, if yes, if they did all of this, then that's an outcome. And what's the impact of this outcome? Let's say maybe your retention goes up by 10%. Or maybe the churn goes down. Maybe more people pay for premium plans, right? That would be considered a real success. But what if the feature launches and nobody cares about it? People ignore the streak tracker it just launched, their behavior doesn't change, and retention stays the same, right? There's no change in your retention. In that case, did we really succeed? The answer is no. We delivered an output, but no outcome and no impact. And as PM or for PM, that's actually a failure. Now, this is why measuring success matters so much, because without it, we can trick ourselves into thinking we are actually making progress when all we are doing is just busy moving pixels around. Now, not all metrics are created equal. Some metrics give us deep insight into whether we are driving value, and some metrics just gives us a lot of noise. And as PMs, our job is to focus on the metrics that matters the most, the ones that tie, outputs to outcome and outcomes to impact. So how do we do that? Well, one of the simplest and most powerful frameworks that we can use is called the AARR framework, also known as the pirate funnel. Why pirate, right? Well, it's because when you say the letters out loud, it sounds very funny. So we just, call it pirate funnel. The AARR framework breaks down your product metrics into 5 stages. You have the acquisition, which is how do users find you? How many people are signing up or installing your product? And then you have the activation. How many of those users hit their first aha moment in your product? Do they actually experience value early on or it's later? And you have the first R, which is retention. Do they come back? Are they sticking around and building a habit in your product? You have revenue. Are they paying you? Are they upgrading or contributing to your bottom line? And then you have the last R, which is referral. Are they bringing others into the product? Are they so happy about your product that they can tell a friend or they can tell a colleague? The acquisition metrics, right, are important, but by themselves, they don't tell you if you're delivering value. You could acquire 1 million users through a paid ad campaign that you launched, but if none of them activate or retain, then you've wasted your money. Activation metrics tells you if people are experiencing the value of your product quickly. This is often where PMs focus the most because if users don't activate, nothing else matters. Now think of Dropbox, for those of us that have used Dropbox. Their activation metric was when users uploaded their first file. And for products like Slack or Discord, their activation metric would be if, let's say, a particular team is able to send out up to 2,000 messages. And for another product like the Duolingo language learning app, it's when you complete your first few lessons. If you don't hit activation, you're going to churn right before you ever retain, right? And of course, retention metrics are the truest test of product market fit. If people keep coming back week after week, month after month, it means they are finding value with your product. And if they don't, then no amount of acquisition will save you. In fact, retention is often called the king of metrics in product management because it reflects long-term value. While revenue metrics are about whether the business is capturing value in return, are people converting, to paid user? Are they upgrading? Are they generating recurring revenue? It's not enough for users to love your product. The business also has to thrive. The referral metrics are often overlooked, but they are incredibly powerful. When users love your product, they love it enough to invite others, you create a viral loop, right? Products like Zoom, WhatsApp, and Calendly, they grew massively because, well, referrals were baked into the product experience. So here's the beauty of the A triple R. It covers the full life cycle of a user, from the moment they hear about your product, to when they experience value, to when they stick, and to when they pay, and from when they pay to when they invite other people. It's a simple but powerful way to think about metrics. Now let me tie this back to what we learned with Confluence. Remember when we created project overview pages and added different sections, right? Now think of AA triple R as the overview page for your product metrics. It helps you categorize and structure what matters so you don't get lost in random numbers. Later, when we talk about building a reporting plan, you see how this framework can guide the structure of your reports. Also, here's an important warning though. Don't try to measure everything at once. A common mistake that new PMs make is that they try to create a dashboard with over 50 to 100 metrics. It looks impressive, yes, but it's also overwhelming. And sometimes when it gets overwhelming, it becomes useless. So instead, pick 1 to 2 key metric for each stage of your AA triple R framework and focus there until you complete them. Okay, so let's run through a couple of quick examples, right? For a marketplace like Uber Eats, acquisition here would mean new application downloads, right? While activation would mean placing first orders, those people who have, downloaded the app for the first time, they get to place an order. And then retention here is how often you order per month, while revenue equals average order value. And then referral equals how often you share your referral code, that is, if the product has a referral code. While for a SaaS product like Notion, acquisition would equal signups, and activation would equal creating your first document. Retention, weekly active docs. Your revenue would equal upgrades to team plans, while your referral would equal inviting teammates. Have you seen how neat that is? All of a sudden, you're not lost over in, let's say, 100 different metrics. You're telling a clear story across, the funnel. So as a PM, whenever you are asked questions like, how is the product doing, or what's the process of this product, or what's the feedback, right? Don't just throw out numbers like, oh, we have 10K signups and so on. Instead, tell the AA triple R story. That sounds something like, let's say we acquired 10K users last month, 60% activated, 30% are retained, and then week over week, 10% converted to paid, and then 5% invited teammates. That's a more complete picture. And that is the mindset of a PM who knows how to measure success. So that should be your mindset as a PM. All right, kindly confirm you can still hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, let's talk about the first big stage in the funnel after acquisition, and that is activation. Now, if you remember from the AA triple R framework, acquisition is about how users find you, but acquisition doesn't matter if those users never experience the value of your product. And that is where activation comes in. So What exactly is activation? Activation is when a user performs the key action that gives them their first taste of value. In other words, it's more like the aha moment that I mentioned earlier. Let me give you a few real world examples. For Dropbox, like I mentioned, if you know what Dropbox is, right? Activation for Dropbox happens when a user uploads their first file. Until that moment, Dropbox is just an empty folder. The value only becomes real when you put something in it. And for Discord, let me use Discord since that is our communication channel. For Discord, activation is when a team is able to send thousands of messages. Why? Because once you have a team that is, actively chatting, they are actively communicating, it means that they are already hooked, right? They are hooked to that product. And for Duolingo, activation would mean or might mean completing the first few lessons. That's when a user feels like, oh, okay, this app can actually help me learn a language, and they keep using it. So activation is not about signing up. It's not about logging in, and it's even not about the first, thing that you do, right? It's basically if you are able to demonstrate the product value. Now, how do we measure activation? There are a few common metrics, right? We have the activation rate. This is the percentage of new users who reach rather the key moment of value. For example, if 1,000 people sign up for your app and 400 of them, please let's take note of all these numbers. If you have 1,000 people sign up for your app and 400 of them complete their first action, your activation rate is 40%. And then we have the time to value, TTV. This is how long it takes a user to reach activation. If it takes too long, people get bored and they drop off halfway. The best product design onboarding flow, right, shortens time to value as much as possible. Your onboarding or your sign up or login process should not be too long that it bores people out. And then we have KEA, key early actions. Now, these are the little behaviors that signal a user is on the path to activation. For example, let's use Slack. In Slack, inviting teammates is a strong early action that predicts long-term activation. If I just come on your product and I'm already sending out my referral links, it means that, okay, I'm not in a hurry to leave, right? So the key question at this stage is, did the user, experience value quickly or early? If your activation is low, it means people are signing up, but they are not, actually seeing value. If they don't see value early on in your product, they are going to churn out. Now, this is why so many products obsess over onboarding, right? Great onboarding, having a great onboarding isn't just a nice to have. It is directly tied to, activation. Some time ago, I worked on a B2B SaaS product, if you remember what B2B is, where signups were strong, but activation was very, very weak. People would create accounts, they are going to poke around, and then they just disappear. When we tried to investigate and we dug deeper into the data that we had, we realized that our onboarding process was way too complicated. It took users an average of 3 days before they could experience the first real value of the product, and that was way too long. So what we did was we stripped out everything else and redesigned the onboarding. around one clear action, right? Which was uploading a document. Now, guess what happened? Due to that, our activation rate jumped from 20% to 55%. Our retention also improved too, because once people hit the first moment of value, they started sticking around a lot more. Always remember that activation is the foundation of retention. If you can't activate users, you can't retain them. You can't monetize them if you cannot retain them. And you can't get referrals if you cannot monetize and retain them. We should always, remember that. Now, the next question to answer would be, are users actually engaging with our product? Activation tells us that a user saw value once, but engagement tells us whether they keep seeing value day after day or week after week. And as product managers, engagement is where we start to learn how deeply our product fits into people's lives. So, what do we mean by engagement? Simply put, engagement is the depth and frequency of usage. It's about how often, users come back and how meaningfully they interact with your product. So let's try to break this down into some of the most common engagement metrics that we have. We have the DAU, the WAU, and we have the MAU. Now, the DAU stands for daily active users. Don't get confused, right? DAU means daily active users. WAU means weekly active users. MAU means monthly active users. So these terms are not that complicated. Now, DAU, how many unique users were active today? That's basically what it means. And then how many unique users were active this week? How many unique users were active this month? Now, these metrics tells us the scale of engagement across different time frames, right? DAU and the rest are very, very important. You have something like feature adoption rates. Now, this measures how many users adopt a new features. For example, if you launched a new dark mode, right, and only 5% of your active users switch it on, because they always have to switch on the dark mode. That is a low adoption. If 50% adopt it within a month, that's, you have some strong engagement there. And then let's say session frequency or depth, right? This measure, it measures how often users return in a given period and how much they do when they are there. For example, in Spotify, depth might be measured by number of playlists created or number of songs played per session. So here's the key question, engagement metric answers. Are users building habits around your products? Because at the end of the day, products that win are products that become part of a routine. Think of the apps you use daily, maybe WhatsApp or your Gmail or even your Facebook. You don't just use them once and abandon them. They become embedded in your life or your work. And that is what we call engagement. Please note, right? You shouldn't confuse engagement with addiction. As PMs, our job isn't to just keep people clicking endlessly, right? It is to create meaningful engagement that delivers value to people. For example, I mentioned Duolingo earlier. Duolingo will not measure their metrics based on how many people log in, right? They are going to be measuring things like lessons completed per week, right? That makes sense because it is tied to the user's goal, the goal of learning a language. But if Duolingo started tracking hours spent in the app as their key engagement metric, that would be a vanity metric, right? It doesn't prove learning, it just proves time spent. So the real PM question to ask here would be what does meaningful engagement look like in your product? Is it creating documents or sending messages or playing songs or completing lessons? Once you are able to define, that, you can measure it and you can begin to improve on it and use it to drive positive outcomes. If you can't retain users, nothing else matters. You need to know that. You can spend all the money in the world on acquisition. You can get 1 million downloads. But if people try your product once and never come back, please confirm you can still hear me.
Yes, we
Yes, we
can
can
hear
still
you.
hear you.
Thank you. If they try your product once and never come back, all that effort goes down the drain. It's going to be like filling a leaky bucket. You keep pouring water in it, but it keeps leaking out. That's what poor retention looks like. So what is retention? Retention measures whether users keep coming back and continuing to use your product over time. It's proof that your product has become valuable enough to form a habit of somebody. So let's try to maybe break this down a bit. We have the weekend retention or the day end retention. Now, this is one of the most common measures. You look at a group of users who signed up on the same day and then see how many are still active after number of days or number of weeks. For example, day one retention might be 40%, right? You might have 40% users who come back the next day, and then day 7 might be just 20%, and then day 30, you have 10%. A healthy product will usually show a steep drop off at first, and then it flattens into a steady curve. That plateau, right, is your true retention. And then we have the churn rate. Now, this is the flip side of the retention. It measures how many users stop using your product over a given time. If you have 1,000 customers at the start of the month and 900 by the end, your churn rate is 10%. And we also have the survival curve. Now, this is a visual way of showing retention over time. Imagine a line that starts at 100% on day 0 and gradually drops as users leave your product. The key question would be, does the line flatten or does it keep falling to 0? If it flattens, it means you found a group of users who truly love your product and they are sticking around. And then we have the customer lifetime value, LTV. Retention also tries to, directly tie into the business outcome. The longer a user stays, the more they are likely to spend. LTV estimates how much revenue you can expect from a user over their entire relationship with your product. For some real example, let's use WhatsApp. WhatsApp has an incredible retention because you have your friends on WhatsApp, right? So you always have a reason to come back to WhatsApp and you have a reason not to leave so soon. It becomes part of your daily routine. And then if you're interested in languages, Duolingo has, good retention for motivated learners, but weaker for casual ones. If you're a casual learner, if you do not love, learning a new language, Duolingo is not for you, right? If you don't build a habit in the first week, you get to churn out quickly. That is why they send you something called push notifications with the owl, right? That their owl reminding you to practice. And for Netflix retention always spikes when they release a new content. But in the long term, their long-term retention depends on whether people find, get to see new shows consistently. Retention is the ultimate test of, product market fit. If people keep coming back without you forcing them, it means you're solving a real problem in their lives. And that is the aim here. Okay, we've talked about activation, we've talked about engagement and retention, all of which they focus more on the user's side of the story, whether the user is finding value, if the user is coming back, or if the user is sticking around. Now let's talk about the business side, which is the monetization metrics. At the end of the day, most products aren't just built for fun. They are built to sustain a business. And as PM, part of our responsibility is to make sure that the product doesn't just deliver value to users, but also it should capture value in return. And that is what monetization is all about. So how do we measure monetization? Well, there are a few key metrics every product manager should know. We have the average revenue per user, which is the ARPU. This measures how much revenue on average you generate from each user. For example, if you have, let's say you have $10,000 in revenue and you have 1,000 users, this simply means that your average revenue per user is $10. This is especially useful when comparing across segments or cohorts. If one group of users has higher average revenue per user, you know they are more valuable. Then we have conversion rate, right? This is the trial or free to paid conversion. Many modern products are freemium, not premium, freemium, right? That means that lots of users sign up for free, but only a fraction converts to paying customers. The conversion rate tells you what percentage of free users eventually pay. For example, let's use Spotify. Spotify has millions of free users, but only a certain percentage upgrade to premium. That conversion is their monetization engine, right? That is the conversion they use to see their paid user. And we have the monthly recurring revenue and the annual recurring revenue, MRR and ARR. For subscription products, this is the lifeblood. The monthly recurring revenue, right? Predictable monthly revenue from subscription, you know that, okay, you have how many users at the end of the month, this is how much you're expecting. While the annual version is also the same. PMs often track monthly recurring revenue, right? They often track growth as a key signal of business health because it's easier to track the monthly one because people are paying frequently than it is to track the annual one because it's just once in a while payment. And then we have the NRR, which is the net revenue retention. Now, this one is powerful. NRR measures how much revenue you retain and expand from your existing customers, even after they churn. For example, suppose each 100 customers that you have pays $100, right? Each of them, they pay $100 this month, right? And next month, 10 customers churn. That means you have lost $1,000. But 20 existing customers upgrade to a bigger plan, which means they are adding $2,000. Your revenue now is $11,000 NRR. So now you have 110% NRR. I'll take that again. You have 100 customers that have paid $100 each this month, right? So that is how much? $10,000. Next month, rather, you have 10 customers who churn out. By churn out, I mean they either leave your product or they are just not responsive. Now, when 10 of them go, you have lost how much? You have lost $1,000. But while you have lost that, you have 20 existing customers upgrade their plan, right? They upgrade to a bigger plan, which has officially added $2,000, right, to your revenue. Now, your revenue will now be $11,000. From this $11,000, your net revenue retention is going to be how much? It's going to be 110%. So this is the beautiful part of NRR. So basically what that means is that your product is growing even without new customers. And that is the dream of every product. You need to understand that healthy monetization usually follows strong retention. Think about it. If people don't stick around, they are not going to pay. If they don't find any ongoing value, they are not going to upgrade, right? So monetization is often the lagging indicator of all the work you've done on activation, engagement, and even retention. Some examples would be Netflix monetizes through subscription. Their monetization metrics includes the ARPU and the churn. But notice, monetization is only possible because they retain users by constantly releasing new content. As for Zoom, Zoom monetizes through freemium model. Lots of people use the free tier of Zoom, but conversion to paid happens when teams need more than 40 minutes or they need more advanced features. Now, without activation and retention, that particular conversion would not happen, and many more. So here is a key PM mindset that I would like for all of us to have going forward. Monetization is not just about charging money, right, in your product. It's about aligning your product with the value it creates. For example, if your product saves companies time, monetization could be charging based on seats. If your product drives transaction, monetization could be a commission. If your product delivers content, your monetization could be subscription or ads. The metrics, ARPU, conversion, MRR, and NRR, tells you whether that alignment is working or whether it's not working. So to sum this up, retention proves value, monetization captures value, right? You're proving value with your retention, and monetization captures the value that your retention has proved. As PMs, we need to measure both and understand the link between them. Moving on to referral. Referral is simple to understand, but it's also incredibly powerful when done right. The fact that it's simple does not mean it's not just as useful. It answers the questions that says, does your user love your product enough to bring other people in? And let me tell you this, the strongest growth engine any product can have is the word of mouth engine. When users themselves are your marketers, growth becomes very exponential. So what metrics do we use to measure referral? Okay, we have the first one, which is referral rate. This is the percentage of your users who invite other people. For example, if 1,000 users signed up this month and 200 of them sent at least one invite, your referral rate is 20%. This tells you how strong your natural sharing behavior is. And then we have the viral coefficient, right, which is the K factor. This is, a slightly more advanced metric. It measures how many new users each existing user brings. Let's say you have 1,000 users. Each, existing users, how many new users do they get to bring? If every user invites 2 people and 50% of those invited people actually sign up, then each user effectively brings in 1 new user. Your viral coefficient is equals to 1. If K is greater, your product is growing virally without extra market spend. If K is lesser than 1, you still need external acquisition. A bit of mathematics here. And then we have organic versus paid growth split. This tells you how many new users came through word of mouth versus marketing campaign. Now, products with strong referral often see a majority of new users arriving organically. Some examples, like I had mentioned, Dropbox. Dropbox grew massively in its early days through referrals. They gave both the inviter and the invitee free extra storage space. That one simply, please confirm you can still hear me. I'm getting network notifications here.
Can hear you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that extra storage that they were offering to the invitee and the inviter basically gave them a mechanic that fueled, their growth exponentially. While for Zoom, they exploded because of referrals too. Now, during the pandemic, people sent links to meetings, and suddenly millions of people were trying Zoom without Zoom having to pay for ads, right? Because people couldn't go home and couldn't go out rather, and the whole distance and work from home, that's when it all started. So people used Zoom. And WhatsApp has it also has incredibly strong referrals built into its core use case. Now, every time you message someone, you're effectively pulling them into an app. That moment where you're like, oh, you want to get something from somebody and you're like, can I get your WhatsApp number? Can I text you on WhatsApp? You're, pulling them into that particular product. So referral metrics don't just measure growth hacks, they measure whether your product naturally creates network effect. On its own, without stress, it just creates network effect. What are guardrails? The name gives you a clue, right? Just like a highway guardrail keeps cars from vying off the road, guardrail metrics keeps your product from driving into a ditch while your focused on growth. Now, here's the thing. When you're optimizing for growth, it's very easy to accidentally harm the user experience. I'm going to say that again. When you're busy optimizing to grow your product, it's very, very easy to accidentally or unintentionally harm the user experience of your product. If you only focus on acquisition, you might spam the users, right, with maybe aggressive ads and flyers. And if you only focus on engagement, you might design addictive loops that frustrates your user. If you only focus on revenue as well, you might overcharge and lose the trust of your users. Now that's where the guardrail metrics comes in. They are the safety checks that makes sure your pursuit of success doesn't backfire at you. Now, some examples here would be crash or error rate. Now, imagine your DAU is climbing, right? Remember what a DAU is, but your app is crashing for 10% of the sessions. If you only looked at DAU, you think that you were doing great, but in reality, you're frustrating a lot of users while your DAU is, climbing. And then crash rate acts like a guardrail. You can't celebrate growth if the product is broken. We have page load time or performance. Users today are impatient. Take yourself, for example. If you're using a product that frustrates you to log in or frustrates you to sign up, what do? You just abandon it and look for the next alternative. If your site takes 5 seconds to load instead of 1, your engagement will drop. So while you push for more engagement or revenue, you must keep performance within acceptable ranges as well. Now, support tickets per user. Let's say revenue is going up, but support tickets are also exploding. Support tickets comes in when your QA/QC people are currently testing the application. If your support tickets are exploding, that tells you that your growth, of course you're having growth, but it's going to tell you that your growth is causing some level of friction. A PM would use tickets per user as a guardrail to ensure growth doesn't overwhelm the support team or degrade the experience of the product. And of course, we have customer satisfaction metrics. Now, these are direct feedback indicators. You might be hitting growth targets, but if your NPS is failing, you're building unhappy customers, right? So guardrail metrics forces you to stop yourself and ask, is this growth sustainable? As I am growing, can my product, accommodate this growth? Now think of it this way. Core metrics they are like your speedometer, right? They are like how fast you're going. While your guardrail metrics are your brakes and your airbags in your car, right? They are there to confirm if you're staying safe and to also keep you safe. So as PMs, you need to define your key metrics, your North Star, your funnel members, but alongside them, you must always define your guardrails as well. Write them down, track them weekly, and make sure you're not driving the car off the road while you're trying to go faster. So let's move on to vanity metrics versus value metrics. I hope we are following. Kindly give me a thumbs up if you're still with me and I am not talking to myself. Give me a thumbs up. We have 21 persons on this call, and we have Numbers that may look impressive at first glance, but do not actually tell us anything useful about whether a product is succeeding. They often reflect, surface level activity or exposure rather than real value being delivered. And examples would include things like page views or number of apps downloads. Or on your social media, it could be your likes, your follows, or your social impressions. Now, the problem with vanity metrics is that they cannot guide decision making. Knowing that 100,000 people viewed a landing page does not tell you whether those people activated, whether they retained or generated revenue. While on the other hand, value metrics are the ones that indicate real user behavior, right? The real user behavior, change, and even long-term success. Now, these are the metrics that allows product managers to assess whether the product is working and whether it needs improvement. And examples would include activation rates, how many users reached the first, aha moment of value. And then we have retention, how many users continue coming back after a given period. And we have the revenue growth, whether the product is actually generating business value. Now, the Net Promoter Score, NPS, whether users are satisfied enough to recommend. Now, the key question we should always ask ourselves is, does this metric show real product success or progress, or is it just showing you what you want to see at the moment? If a metric only shows visibility or exposure, that is a vanity metrics. If it shows progress towards Okay, give me a sec to reshare my screen. Confirm you can see my screen. Apologies for that
I can
glitch.
see your screen.
All right. So I said that if a metric only shows visibility or exposure, that is the vanity metrics. If it shows progress towards outcome and impact, you can call that a value metrics. In practice, right, the difference matters because vanity metrics can mislead teams into thinking that they are actually succeeding when they are not. Value metrics, however, provides actionable signals that helps us improve the product. So as PMs, our discipline is to avoid being distracted by the surface level numbers and instead stay focused on the metrics that truly measures success. When it comes to measuring product success, one of the most effective tools that we use is the North Star metrics. This is the single most important measurement that captures the core value your product delivers to customers. The reason it's called a North Star is because it provides direction. It gives the whole team one clear focus. So instead of chasing multiple numbers that may or may not matter, everyone aligns around a single metric that truly reflects success. For example, still using Spotify, Spotify uses weekly active listeners as their North Star metrics. Slack focuses on messages sent per organization, and so on. Notice the pattern of each of these people. Each of these metrics is tied directly to how customers experience the product's value. If people listen to music more often, Spotify grows. If teams send more messages, Slack becomes stickier. If more, let's say you own a hotel, more nights are booked, it means you have success. So the North Star metric is powerful, but it doesn't stand alone. To understand how it moves, we use something called a metric tree. Now, imagine the North Star at the top of the tree. Below it are the key drivers that feed into it. Things like acquisition, things like the activation, retention, and conversion, right? They feed into it. So together, these smaller metrics, they get to create the foundation that drives the North Star. Now, the beauty of this approach is that it gives you both focus and structure. The North Star ensures everyone is aligned on the big picture, while the metric tree makes it clear which, okay. While the metric tree here makes it clear which levers you can pull to influence that big picture that you have been aligned with. If the North Star is not improving, you don't have to panic. You just go down the tree, look at each of those branches, and identify where the problem lies. Does it lie in acquisition, activation, or retention? Maybe your activation is weak, maybe retention is dropping, or maybe supply is too low. The tree helps you, diagnose the issue. So when you think about measuring success as a product manager, always ask yourself two questions. What is our North Star metric? And what are the drivers that support it? Once you define all of these clearly, you'll be able to measure and improve with focus instead of drowning in numbers that don't connect back to the real outcome that you are looking for. So now that we've covered how to identify the right metrics, the next step is figuring out how to actually measure them in practice. This is where product analytics tools comes in. These tools are designed to collect data on how users interact with your product, right? Analyze that data and then present it in a way that helps you understand user behavior and business outcomes. As a product manager, it's not enough to just know what metrics matters. You also need the right system to track and interpret those metrics. For example, we have the Google Analytics, right? Google Analytics is one of the most widely used tools for understanding website traffics, user flows, and general basic conversions. It's especially strong at acquisition metrics because it shows you how people are finding your product and what channel drives the most traffic. Then you have tools like Amplitude and Mixpanel, which go much deeper into product uses. These tools, right, they allow you to define custom events, things like user uploaded first file or user invited a teammate and so on. Once you track those events, you can analyze funnels, the funnels of the retention curves and the cohort behavior. In other words, they let you see not just how many people signed up, but what they actually did inside the product and whether they actually stuck around with you. There are also tools like Pendo and Hip, which adds layer of qualitative and automated tracking. Pendo, for example, you can always check out these tools that I'm mentioning during your free time. Pendo, for example, combines analytics with in-app messaging, so you can see how users behave and also guide them with some prompts. And Heap automatically captures all users' interaction without you needing to predefine any event, which makes it useful when you want quick insights without any heavy setup. Now, the point here isn't which tool is best. Different companies choose different tools depending on their needs and their budget. The point is that analytic tools are essential for connecting your metrics to real user behavior. And without them, you're probably just doing a guesswork, and that is not healthy for your product. But with them, you can say with confidence, our activation rate, for instance, is 45%, our 7-day retention is 20%, and here are the exact behavior that predicts, long-term engagement and many more. So as you grow in product management, you're going to hear about these tools, and you're going to hear a lot more names of tools. So what matters most is understanding their role. They are how you measure the things that matters, how you validate whether your hypotheses are correct, and how you track, progress towards your North Star metric. When we talk about analytics tools, one of the key components to understand is event-based tracking. Almost all modern product analytics tools like Mixpanel, Amplitude, and Heap are built around this idea of event-based analytics. An event is simply a user's action inside your product. An example of that action could include signing up, it could include login, or uploading a file, or creating a project, depending on what kind of product it is, or inviting a teammate. By tracking events, you move beyond simple metrics like page views, and you instead capture meaningful behaviors that indicate more value. For example, you don't just want to know how many people visited your homepage, right? You want to know how many actually created an account and then went on to complete their first meaningful action in your product. Once you're tracking events, you can analyze them in different powerful ways. And one common method is a funnel analysis. A funnel is a sequence of events that presents a user's journey. For example, sign up. Sign up presents completing profile. You upload the first file, invite a teammate, and at each step you can see how many users get to drop off. This tells you where the friction point is in your product. If 70% of users sign up but only 20% upload a file, you know exactly where to focus your efforts in optimization. Now, another useful method is called cohort analysis. Cohorts are a group of users who share something in common, like the week they signed up or the feature they first used. And by tracking cohorts, you can see how different groups behave over time. For example, users acquired in January might have a 30% retention rate after 4 weeks, while users acquired in March might have a 50% rate. So that tells you that something changed. Maybe your onboarding has improved, maybe your marketing, your marketing team, they targeted a better audience. And cohorts gives you all of those insights. The purpose of all this is very, very simple. You basically want to understand how user behaviors connect to outcomes, which actions predict long-term retention, which flow causes a user to drop off. Is it your sign-up flow or your editing a profile flow and so on? Event analytics tools give you the data to answer all of those questions. So as a PM, one of your key responsibility is defining the right events to track. If you track too many, your dashboard becomes very noisy. If you track too few, you miss the story. The discipline here is to choose the actions that represents real progress towards your product's value. Set them up in your analytics tool and then use the funnel and cohorts to learn where where you need to improve or where you should improve. Now, numbers alone can't always tell you why users behave the way they do. This is where session replay and UX tools comes in. These tools allow you to actually watch how users interact with your product. Now, instead of just seeing that, oh, 60% of users dropped off at the onboarding page, you can watch recordings of real sessions and see exactly what happened. Did the users get stuck on maybe a confusing form when they were signing up? Did they scroll but they could not find the call to action? Did they rage a click button that didn't work? Session replay tools, they get to show you all of that. Now, common tools in this category include Hotjar. We have Hotjar, we have Full Story, we have Clarity. We have other ones like SmartLog, Crazy Eggs, and so on. You could research on them. Each of them provides slightly different features, but they all serve the same purpose, which is giving you visibility into your users' behavior in your product. Now, the most common features are session replays and heat map. Session replays lets you literally play back a user's journey step by step. Heat maps aggregate data across many users to show where people click, to show where they scrolled, and what part of the screen they ignored. Together, these tools, they turn abstract metrics into concrete insights for you. For example, a funnel analysis might tell you that 70% of users dropped off before completing a sign-up form. A session replay tool can show you the reason, right, why they dropped off. They could either show you that the UI is poorly designed, the password field, frustrates the user, and so on. Now, without the replay, you would only know what happened. But with the replay, you get to see exactly where and why. These tools are especially valuable when improving onboarding flow. If you want to improve your onboarding flow, you can use these tools. If you want to improve your checkout processes or any critical part where small amounts of friction can lead to a big loss, like forgot password and the rest, you need to use this tool because they also help you prioritize design changes, because instead of guessing what is wrong, you can see it firsthand because it's a replay, more like a recording. The purpose of using session replay and UX tools is very simple. It's basically to pair the hard data that you have with human context. Analytics tells you the numbers. Replay tools show you the experience behind those numbers. And as a PM, combining both gives you a complete picture of how your product is really performing. Okay, up to this point, we've been talking about measuring what is already happening in your products, activation, retention, engagement, monetization, and so on. But product management isn't only about observation. It's also about making changes and testing whether those changes actually work. And that is where experimentation tools comes in. Kindly give me a thumbs up if you are still with me. Let me know I'm not talking to myself. Okay, thank you. Now, experimentation allows us to test ideas in a controlled way before rolling them out to everyone. The most common method is the A and B or Q&A testing. This is where you show one version of a product to one group of users, maybe user A, and a different version to another group. You then compare the results from each of these groups to see which one performs better. For example, you might test whether changing a button color from blue to maybe green increases, click-through rates. There's something we call a click-through rate. If group B outperforms group A in that aspect, you have a data to back up, that change that you're about to implement. There's also the multivariate testing, which allows you to test multiple variations at once. So instead of just blue versus green, you might test button colors, text, maybe text sizes, and placement and all of that. This gives you richer insights, but it requires you having more data. And another powerful tool is the use of feature flags. This allows you to turn features on or off for specific users without deploying a new version of the product. If we have developers here, they are the ones that will be able to relate to this. Now, this is extremely valuable for gradual rollout, gradual shipping. You can release a new feature to 5% of users, measure the impact, and then decide whether to expand or roll it back. And tools like Launch Darkly, especially in this kind of controlled release, are what you're going to be needing. Now, the main goal of experimentation is to validate what works and reduce risk. And instead of working with assumption, assuming a new feature will improve retention, you test it out. Instead of betting the whole user base on a particular change, you roll it out gradually and just experiment. This is what makes product management, scientific rather than a guesswork. For PMs, the discipline here lies in setting up experiments correctly. You need to define a clear hypothesis. For example, we believe simplifying the onboarding flow will increase activation by 10%. You then run the experiments, measure the results, and decide based on data rather than people's opinion. Experimentation tools closes the loop between analytics and action. Analytics tells you what is happening, while experiment tells you what will happen if you make this particular change. So together, they give you, the confidence to build and iterate without just jumping in blind. Now, the first 3 steps of creating a reporting plan are very straightforward, but they are also the foundation that determines whether your reporting will actually be useful. The is to define your North we talked about North Star. Now is the one that represents the core value your product delivers to user. It's the metric that if it improves, it tells you that your product is succeeding. And without this, you end up reporting random numbers that they don't connect to the bigger picture that you have for your product. So the very first step is to be clear. What is the North Star we are trying to move? Like I mentioned earlier, write them down and then run with that. And step 2 is to pick 3 to 5 supporting Please, kindly mute your mic, please. Thank you. Let's please pay attention and not unmute our mics. Thank you. So step 2 is to pick 3 to 5 supporting metrics. The mistake some teams make here is either they are tracking too many things or focusing on the wrong ones. 3 to 5 is the sweet spot, right? Because it gives enough depth to tell a story, but it's still very manageable. Now, these supporting metrics should connect directly to the North Star. For example, if your North Star is weekly active users, your supporting metrics might include activation rate. Maybe you could use a 7-day retention and 7-day churn. Each one provides a different angle on why the North Star is moving the way it is. And then step 3 is to decide on your review cadence. This is about how often you look at these numbers. So metrics move quickly and should be checked weekly. Others move slowly and make more sense on a monthly or even quarterly basis. The key here is not to just report whenever you feel like it. It's to establish a predictable rhythm or a predictable flow. Maybe weekly reporting works well for your team level, while monthly reporting often, are better for leadership or board reviews. For your team members, your designers and the rest, you guys can have a weekly sync up. But for your stakeholders and leadership, you could have maybe a 3 months or 6 months review report. Now, these 3 steps might seem simple, but they are what gets to turn your data into systems. And without a North Star, you lack direction. Without supporting metrics, you lack context. We have step 4 here, which is to build a reporting template. The idea is to make sure that every report follows the same format so that people can quickly understand it. A good reporting template usually has 4 parts. It has the first part, which is a short summary, a 1 or 2 line overview of how the product performed in that period. The second part is, the wins, what went well, where you guys improved, and so on, all of the positive signals that you saw. Well, the third part is the risks, issues that came up, negative trends, or things that might cause problem if not addressed. And the fourth part is the actions, the concrete steps the team will take in response to the data that they currently have. With this structure, your report doesn't just present numbers, it tells a story and points towards action. And step 5 is to assign metric owners and accountability. This is very, very crucial and critical. If no one owns a metric, it's not going to improve. For each metric in your reporting plan, assign a clear owner. That person is not the only one responsible for the outcome, please note, but they are responsible for tracking the outcome. They are responsible for tracking it, they are responsible for reporting it, and leading discussions about it. This makes sure that that metrics doesn't just sit on your dashboard, with no one paying attention to it. Instead, every metric has, someone watching it and pushing for progress. When you combine these steps with the earlier ones and be able to define your North Star, you get to choose your supporting metrics, you get to set a decadence and build a reporting template, and of course assign accountability. That's everything you need to make sure the product measurement is not just an abstract concept, but a real part of how the team operates day to day. The key principal thing here is that measurement is only valuable if it drives action. A template ensures clarity. In fact, as a product manager, you should be the best person to come up with templates. You need to learn how to come up with good templates, right? Because a template ensures clarity, and assigning owners ensures that work gets to be followed through. And together, they make sure that your reporting plan becomes a very good tool for conscious improvement. Okay, so we have come to the end of today's class, and as we close this session, I want to basically just do a summary of everything that we have talked about, and just bring everything back to one bigger picture, which is product management. The first point is that PM success is about linking outputs to outcomes and outcomes to impact. If you remember vividly, that is how we started. Outputs are the features we build. Outcomes are the changes in user behavior. Those features create, right? Those features are the... Can you guys hear me? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, outcomes are the changes in user behavior those features get to create. And then impact is the business's value that results from those changes. If we stop at outputs, we are just going to be launching and shipping features. If we measure outcomes, we know whether users are finding value with our products or not. And if we connect those outcomes to impact, we show how products work and how it drives the company forward. That's the real definition of success in product management. Now, the second point is that metrics are your compass. They guide you, just as a compass tells you if you're heading north or if you're heading south. Metrics tells you whether your product is moving towards success or if it's going out of the way. The third point is that analytic tools are your, I think we can call them your X-ray visions. They let you see beneath the surface. Instead of guessing why users behave the way they do, tools like Mixpanels and Amplitude or Hotjar, they let you observe it directly. They reveal patterns, they reveal friction and opportunities that you would never see otherwise. And then I think the fourth and final point is that reporting is your storytelling tool in product management. Data by itself doesn't inspire action, but when you package it into a clear story, here's what happens, and here's why it matters, right? Here's what we are going to do next. Here's this, here's that. That's when your data starts to drive real decision. Storytelling is how you make metrics meaningful for your team and even your stakeholders. So your call to action from this session is very simple. Don't just think of metrics as numbers on a dashboard, right? Think of them as your navigation system, your visibility tool, and your storytelling foundation. Define them very carefully, measure them consistently, and use them to connect the work you do every day to, the bigger picture or the bigger impact your product can have. That's how you move from building features to, building outcome, and from outcomes to building lasting impact for your users. So next up, questions. Do we have questions? I have said a lot, and I'm hoping that we have questions. You know how we do it. If you have questions, kindly raise your hand and I'm going to call you to ask your questions. Questions. We don't have questions after everything I have said so far. You guys must be very, very smart. Okay, if we do not have any question, I think we are going to call it a day. Let me stop the recording in case we have anything to share that is not related to today's class.